Stephen A., 6 of 8 on the road. Moving forward, should the Pacers be concerned?
They should be very, very concerned, but it's not because the Heat are coming, even though I think it's incredibly pivotal that the Indiana Pacers get the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think they should be concerned because it all rides with Paul George. This is what it's come down to. I understand that the Indiana Pacers pride themselves of being a team, and a team they are. They're exceptionally well coached by Frank Vogel with Nate McMillan and those boys. They're exceptionally well managed by Larry Bird and Donnie Walsh and Kevin Pritchard. Outstanding front office, ownership, coaching, and the players collectively as a team. You couldn't find a bunch of nicer guys who work hard, who go about their business the way they're supposed to go about their business. I am a fan of Paul George. I want to preface my comment by saying that. I'm not as big of a fan as my sister Carmen, Skip, because I think the only person she loves more than Paul George is you.
Oh.
Okay?
Thank you, Carmen.
But, but I will say this. She loves herself some Paul George. But I will say this. Something's wrong. He seems distracted. He's shooting less than 30% over the last several games. You came in the last night shooting under 40%, obviously. Shot 8 of 22 from the field. Completely unimpressive. They scored 71 and 77 points, respectively, in their last 2 games. But their problem is not just offense. Their problem appears to be focus. And I'm not speaking about them collectively. I'm putting this on Paul George because he doesn't seem to be himself. Now, Skip, you and I were going to get into this and discuss it, the whole catfishing scandal with some photo he sent or whatever the case may be. Let me say this. I'm not going to comment about that stuff. That's his personal life, his personal business. It's none of our business. But I will say this. There have been a lot of things said, and I hope Paul George is watching while I'm saying this. There have been a lot of things that have been said about Paul George over the last several weeks. Very little of it has been about basketball. Too much stuff circulating about his personal life. It's becoming news, or it's getting out there. That needs to stop quick, fast, and in a hurry. If Paul George wants to emerge and remind everybody that he's a star in this league, tinkering towards superstar status. There was a time when we thought he was there. And now as this season is waning, that doesn't appear to be the case. And a lot of it has to do with stuff that gets said about him that have absolutely nothing to do with basketball. Paul George got his money. The Pacers paid him his money. Paul George is a star in this league. And as far as I'm concerned, an incredibly nice young man who's got loads of potential. But he's got to be careful because there's too many times that I've heard his name and it's had nothing to do with basketball. That has to stop. The Indiana Pacers had their past with all of that other stuff. The brawl at the Palace in Auburn Hills and all of this other stuff. They are a first-class organization. And Paul George, I believe, in terms of how he treats me and how I see him treat other people, seems to be a first-class individual. But when you're that young, and all of this stuff that has nothing to do with basketball is starting to get out about you, it can become a problem, and a problem very, very difficult for a young man to deal with. So I would encourage, and I know the Pacers organization are all over it, and I'm sure they'll handle what needs to be handled. But Paul George right now is costing the Indiana Pacers because he doesn't seem to be himself. He needs to get back to being who we know him to be on the basketball court in order for the Pacers to have a chance to go to the finals.
Okay, for the record, yesterday Paul George strongly denied that he got catfished via social media. So let's let that stand. Now,
Right.
to your big picture point, I am so with you on this. I said before the season started, when we made our predictions, only if Paul George rises into superstardom, if he goes from star, which he was a year ago, to superstar, do I think the Indiana Pacers can dethrone the Miami Heat in the East. And Stephen A., over the last, 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months, Paul George hasn't even played as well as he did a year ago. Something is not right. I have no idea, but the focus has not been there. the energy, the attention to detail, the urgency, whatever all those intangibles are not there right now, starting with him, and it trickles down to the rest of the team. I know Chicago can defend, especially in Chicago, but last night, even though Paul had a decent game, shot 8 for 22, and as Kerry said, he had 21 points. Roy Hibbert went 0 for 5 last night. Yep. Lance Stevenson went 3 for 9 last night. Evan Turner came off the bench as their big bench addition, their trade deadline acquisition. He played almost 20 minutes and went 1 for 4. It's not good enough. And Stephen A., this team has sunk, and we talked about this yesterday. I'm convinced it's had a negative effect on the Miami Heat because they keep wanting to rise and say, let's take it up a level. And then they look at the team they're chasing and they're saying, we're not afraid of them anymore. And I know LeBron and company are saying the right things about this game Wednesday night at Indy, but do I think they fear Indy like they did in the beginning of the year? I do not. And you remember when you went, I don't know what month it was, December, you went to Indy?
Yes.
And sat with these guys, and they said, no, Paul's not going to do it by himself. All 5 are going to be out there. George Hill's even going to be out there, and they're going to sit, was it 5, with Coach, right? With
it
Vogel,
it was the starting 5 with the coach.
With Coach, okay, because we are united, and this is it. And you told me they're on such a mission to dethrone the Heat. And all of a sudden, they've hit the wall. In many ways, like LeBron did after he scored 61 points. And I think the Pacers are starting to figure out, man, it's a long season. And these good teams, the San Antonios, the Heat of the world, they pace themselves. And then there's a time when you flip the switch. They're flipping the switch negatively at the wrong time.